I'm Beck and welcome to a read it and unhaul it vlog or a try a chapter vlog. Essentially I'm going to look at a stack of books that I've got on my to be read pile and go, do I actually want to keep these? Will I enjoy them? So I'm going to read the first chapter of about 5 or 6 different books and then decide. And I'm actually quite looking forward to knowing at last whether I want to keep all of these. The first one that I want to do this with is The Vor by Brian Catling, which is one I've had on my to be read pile for many years now, and it's probably my TBR veteran, my TBR pile of shame. Like, that's this book, so I need to decide whether I'm going to like it or not, because at the moment it's kind of sat on its pedestal and I've not touched it because I'm scared. So I just need to start it and see if I'm going to enjoy it or not and see whether it's worth keeping. I do also have all of these that I want to do the same thing for, but I will reveal them throughout the video. Okay, so I've read the first 12 pages of The Vor, which covers the prologue and then the beginning of chapter 1. And I think I'm gonna put this down because this is very weird. And it might be because my expectations are not what the book is, or just because it's gross and weird. So the prologue starts out with a guy in a hotel room and it seems like he's trying not to die medically, like he's taking different doses of medication and everything. He's got this servant who's helping him measure all the doses and everything. He's standing in front of the mirror, completely naked, holding his and just looking at his reflection. And I was like, okay, this is already weird. First of all, I thought this was going to be a fantasy because magical forest. And second of all, we're looking at a very naked old man in a hotel room. Like, what is going on? Anyway, he dies. And now we're at the beginning of chapter 1 and there's this other guy who's not named, and this woman who is a seer has died or maybe been killed by him, I'm not sure, and he has basically dismembered her entire body and then shot this arrow into the air and into a forest. And when I was reading the description of the author, it says that he's an artist and a sculptor and he does a lot of art installations. So I feel like this might be getting to a particular point, but it just feels very literary to me in terms of having to dig for meaning. And I don't have the brain space for that. Like, I'm not enjoying this book. I'm just being grossed out by it. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to DNF this and get rid of it because this is just not what I thought it would be. It says the Vor is a vast, perhaps endless forest, sentient and magical, a place of demons and angels, of warriors and priests. Like, where is all of that in here? I know I'm very early in, but this is just not delivering at all. Maybe I could get rid of this and try a library book of the audiobook or something in the future, but honestly, this is just quite grotesque and I'm not into it. So she's got to go, which is quite unfortunate. I thought that I would really like that book, but you know, this is why I try them, so I decide whether to keep them or not, I guess. The next book is Battle Mage, which seems like it's going to be cool. So Balfrus is a battle mage sworn to fight and die for a country that fears his kind. Vargas is a common soldier. While mages shoot lightning from the walls of the city, he is drawn to the front line, getting blood on his blade. And Talandra is a princess and spy master, but the war will force her to risk everything and make the greatest sacrifice of all. Magic and mayhem collide in this explosive epic fantasy from a major new talent. I am hoping and praying to the fantasy gods that this is one that I end up loving because that synopsis just has so much promise. I'm pleased to say that I had a lot more success with Battle Mage. I've read the first chapter, which is 16 pages, and we've been introduced to one of the lead characters, Vargas, who is the common soldier. He's in his early 50s. He is shown in the snow with a horse and he is appearing in this soldiers' camp, but I think they're deserters. And anyway, it introduces Vargas, his intention, a bit of backstory, a cool battle scene, and then a purpose just after the battle scene. So it's already hooking me. The only thing that I didn't like was a description of the only woman that has been in here so far. And the description was on page 11. It says, Carla, the village elder, was standing behind the bar. She was a solid woman who'd seen at least 50 summers and took no nonsense from anyone. With a face only her mother could love. It was amazing she'd given birth to 4 healthy children who now had children of their own. Like, why do you have to describe her that way? How rude. Anyway, aside from that little hiccup, I think I can get on board with this because it's setting up what seems to be a very epic story, and the character Vargas is leaving this town to go to war. So there are bigger political things happening that are pulling in our characters at a ground level, which is something that I'm already intrigued by. And there was also use of magic in the beginning, or like magical items. Vargas isn't a magician or mage in any means. He's just a common soldier, but it's cool already to see kind of the world building start to begin in only the first chapter with a non-magical character. So this is definitely staying on my TBR. Unfortunately for the Vor, I'm unhauling that eventually, but this one I am keeping for sure. Hello, I'm back, and I'm pleasantly surprised because I thought I'd be unhauling this book, The Lost War, but I've just read the first chapter and I'm surprisingly engaged. This is a story about Aranok, and there was war in this world and it's now past. However, this guy is a magically imbued dude. He knows spells, he's the king's envoy, and he's in the opening chapter at a pub with, I think, his lover or his partner, and both he and her realize that this boy is being bullied because the king wants money from him and he's sent his thugs to get it from him. So Aranok steps in, pays the tax, and then saves the boy, I guess, without bloodshed. It set up a nice rapport between Aranok and Alejandra, and I'm really worried that because the blurb of this story is about Aranok taking like a lost princess on a quest, I'm really worried that Alejandra is going to die somehow, and I don't like that trope. But I do like what the world is setting up, and I like that there are demons and magic, and there is a like grizzly veteran who is all gruff and grumpy, because I love that trope, that character who is kind of jaded, looking after somebody who is younger, can fend for themselves but still needs a bit of protection, and gets that old jaded character to open up. It's basically the formula of The Last of Us, which I'm obsessed with. So I'm really looking forward to reading this actually, and I thought I was going to get rid of it. So my TBR does not shrink, but at least it means that I've found a book that I think I will like. And this was supposed to be on my Daniel Green's reaction vlog where I read a bunch of his favorites from 2021. Clearly that didn't happen, but you know, I might pick it up really late and go, you know, I actually do like this after all. So the jury is still out. I've only read chapter 1, but it will be staying on my TBR for the moment. The other book that I've got here that I want to try is also left over from my booktubers favorites videos, and this was one of Murphy's favorites of 2021. And sometimes our tastes, like me and Daniel Green, sometimes they cross over, sometimes they really don't. And so I'm kind of tentative about this one. I don't know if I'll like it, but I think it seems in a similar vein, oddly enough, to The Lost War, because there are characters here that are exposed to one of their fathers being executed and they are thrown into like a prison mine, and then from that they want to somehow break free, but then what lies beyond the walls of the prison is even worse because they're rescued by a man, they're pursued by inhuman forces, and so it seems like there are potentially creatures and demons in here, and our main characters are potentially magical, we're not sure yet, and there is that undercurrent of revenge happening, I think, because obviously the father was killed. So I think this is going to be a series of great books that I'm going to end up reading. I'm quite surprised. The last two are more literary fiction, and that's kind of outside my wheelhouse, but for now I'm going to read the first chapter and see what I think about it. I read the first chapter and then I read chapter 2 because sometimes fantasy does this thing I hate where it introduces a whole scene and a bunch of characters that is supposed to set up the threat or the world building, and then you jump from them into the actual characters that the story is about, but by that point you've already wasted your time reading and getting invested in these initial characters, but they were only there to kind of set things up, and now you're whisked away into the actual story. Anyway, that's what this did, and it's why I read chapter 2. But when I was reading through chapter 2 about the actual characters this is supposed to be about, so Aren and Cade, I was like, I'm not as interested. And it's not just because that first chapter kind of threw me off, it's just because I'm not interested in their purpose or their banter, and at some point I found myself skimming a little bit. So I think I'm actually not going to keep this book, and that's kind of a relief because I was looking at this and going, I'm kind of in two minds. Like, I feel like this could be a 3.5 stars if I ended up finishing it, and I want 4 stars or more. So this one's not going to stay, I'm going to unhaul it, but at least I'm happy that this seemed like it would be up my alley. So far we've had a yes and a no, and then Battle Mage is a yes, and then the Vor is also a no. So we're kind of splitting things down the middle here. And then the last 2 books that I wanted to give a try for this vlog and see if I might like them or not. I'm really concerned about these. Honestly, I really don't know how my thoughts are going to fall, but I've got A Man Called Ove and I've got 1,000 Splendid Suns. And I think these were both Emily Fox's favourites. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong, but she's a booktuber that I watch now and her taste is usually quite similar to mine, but she tends to read a lot of classics and historical fiction and literary fiction, and I'm just not into that kind of stuff. So that's really where our tastes diverge, and that's where these come in. I don't know how I'm going to feel about these fictions, but I've had a comment recently on one of my videos about this book saying that I should try it because the characters are incredible, so that kind of bolsters my confidence a little bit. This one I've been told I'm going to cry a lot, so maybe I'll end up liking both and they'll be like the outliers for the genres that they're in for me, but we'll see and I will report back. Alright, it's a few hours later and I've read the chapters of the other books. So I did read this chapter, it's about 12 pages, and while I like the style of the writing, I don't think I'll end up liking the plot. So it says that Miriam is in 15 when she's sent to Kabul to marry Rashid. Nearly 2 decades later, a friendship grows between Miriam and a local teenager, Layla, as strong as the ties between mother and daughter. When the Taliban take over, life becomes a desperate struggle against starvation, brutality, and fear. Yet love can move a person to act in unexpected ways and lead them to overcome the most daunting obstacles with startling heroism. I think this sounds like an incredible book, and I can understand all of the praise that people are talking about because the tone of voice that it is written in is very engaging and the style of writing presents a very legible and easy to follow narrative. But I don't think I will end up loving the book. I really don't know about this one. I don't really want to spend the time reading it. I think it's just going to sit there on my TBR cart and make me feel guilty, and I'm never going to pick it up because I'm not motivated to read this. If I did read it, it might be as an audiobook, but then again, I've heard that it's a sad book, and so I don't want to be that person who's crying on the train. Especially going to work, that's just depressing. So I don't think I'm going to keep this one either. But good news is, I did read the first chapter of A Man Called Ove, and this is 8 pages long. It was a very short chapter, which is already a good sign. I love it when a book has short chapters because when you finish them, it makes you feel like you're achieving something very quickly. And this already captured me with the character. So it opens with Ove, who is 59, and it describes him very well as the kind of person who, when he's talking about someone, he's pointing at them. And he's just trying to buy an iPad, but he also wants a computer, and then he wants it to have a keyboard. And he's just getting angry at every step of the way, and the sales assistants are trying to help him and they're just very disgruntled by the whole thing. So it's a really funny kind of opening to this, and it really shows how much of a grumpy person Ove is, and it sets up his character flawlessly, and the style of writing and the storytelling is really engaging. So I actually think I'll quite enjoy this one even though it's outside of my wheelhouse. So I will be keeping this one. So I'm keeping this one and I'm getting rid of this one. So now in conclusion, my read it or unhaul it challenge to myself, or my try a chapter challenge to myself, I've tried 6 different books and I'm getting rid of The Vor, I'm getting rid of 1,000 Splendid Suns, and I'm also getting rid of An Ember Blade. Honestly, not the 3 that I thought I was going to get rid of, so it definitely pays to try those first chapters. And then the 3 that I'm keeping are Battle Mage, which I'm really excited that I actually like this. Oh, I'm so relieved, honestly. I'm also keeping The Lost War, which is one of the ones that I thought I was going to get rid of, just because sometimes Daniel Green's and my taste really don't overlap, but I'm really surprised here. So I hope that I don't get into it and then go, actually, I don't like this. But the first chapter seemed promising and the premise seemed promising, so I'm hoping that I end up really enjoying it. And then obviously I've got A Man Called Ove, and I'm actually quite happy that I didn't get rid of this. I thought I might be, but the style of the writing and the way that the character was set up makes me really intrigued. So this might just be one outside of my wheelhouse that I end up really enjoying. Kind of like the fact that I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, but I love contemporary romance. So I think this might be an outlier in the sense that it's a nice fiction that I can enjoy. So thank you so much for watching this video. Come and chat to me down below about what you've recently unhauled. I would love to know. But thank you so much again for watching. I'll talk to you down below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.